Welcome to the carnage.
And welcome back to the Carnage. And today we are going to talk about what I'd like to say is pretty much a liberal industry plant. And his name is Scott Galloway. If you don't know who he is, he's basically like the left's version of Andrew Tate. Right. He goes on talk shows and podcasts and talks about, men's issues and, how men are failing and this, that, and the other. Although his take is much different than anybody else's, which is he basically says that men need to get out of women's way, stop impeding the feminist movement, and that all of these, AKA gooners that live in mom's basement, they need to, get better and go better themselves for women. And then on top of that, he's more or less, talking to, I'd like to call easy targets, right? Oprah, View, Pierce Morgan. These are the types of people he more or less goes on and talks to. And then he likes to surround himself with audiences where if you look at the audience at this Oprah show, like 90% of them, supposedly are men we would call like soy boys. I mean, they're basically one Shirley Temple away from playing butt darts with a friend, right? That's what they look like. So he's on these podcasts and basically, shaming men for men's issues. Like, men have all these problems. They're in a crisis and it's their fault. And they're blaming, everything on men, which is typical. We're used to that. But his take is that, men would just be better off if they, focused on getting better and bettering themselves and doing all these things for women. And that's his take. And honestly, 90% of what he says, I just roll my eyes at. And I'm like, this guy has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. There's a few things that I agree with him on, and I'll get into those as we watch part of this interview with Oprah. So let's go ahead and get right into that.
You say that what's happening to men is a 5-alarm fire for men in the United States. Tell us what's going on as you see it.
Well, the statistics are pretty stark. If you walk into a morgue and there's 5 people who've died by suicide, 4 are men. 3 times as like, we have a homeless problem and an opiate problem, but what we really have is a male homeless and a male opiate problem. 3 times as likely to be addicted, 3 times as likely to be homeless, 12 times as likely to be incarcerated. More single women own homes than single men. Women in urban areas are making more money. And let me be clear, we should do nothing to get in the way of that. But if our young men continue to flail, our country and women aren't going to continue to flourish. And just a couple of things you brought up, loneliness and then role models. 1 out of 4 men can't name a best friend. 1 out of 7 men don't have a single friend. And what I would say is there's a lot of factors around this, but something to be cognizant of is that...
Can I just stop you for a second?
Yeah.
Is that unusual? Is that new?
It's getting worse.
So, okay, the one thing I will agree with him on is that I think that men do need more mentors in life. And I think that in relationships specifically, that men should be striving to have more male friend relationships. I think those are healthy relationships to have, ride or die type friends, guys that you can count on more than bettering yourself to go find a woman. Right. And he's right about the statistics about, men unaliving themselves at an alarming rate and the addiction problem and the homeless problem. But the one thing that I want to bring up, and this is a fact, that he says that more women own homes than men, which is actually statistically true unless you look at how many of those women were awarded the house in divorce. So 36% of women who own homes got their home through divorce. So if you were to take that away, men technically own more homes than women in the United States. So, using divorce as a factoid, I guess, to basically say like, well, women are doing better than men because they own more houses. Well, yeah, because they married a guy and then fucked his best friend and then turned around and took him for all he's worth. So why does that get awarded as a statistic for women? I'll never know. But that's his first talking point.
Toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Now, you say that this elicits all sorts of reactions, and you call that phrase the emperor of all oxymorons. What's your take?
Well, I don't think there's any such thing as toxic masculinity. I think there's cruelty, there's abuse of power, there's violence. But masculinity is supposed to get in the way of those things. Women need to cross the street when they see men because they feel safer, right? It breaks my heart that you hear in New York, women are afraid to get on subways, and they'll say because there's too many men.
Yep.
So from a very young age, we have to teach our boys, you're a protector. That's how you demonstrate masculinity. And it's not just physical. Real men break up fights at bars. They don't start them. Your default operating system as a man should be to weigh in and protect. That's why we're here. We have denser bone structure, better double twitch muscle, and this amazing thing called testosterone. And the whole reason we're given that is such that we can protect people. Move to that.
So I agree with him on there is no such thing as toxic masculinity. And here would be the counterpoint to that, which would be if toxic masculinity exists, well, then so would toxic femininity. And what would fall in under toxic femininity? Well, baby trapping a guy or, cheating on a man and then having him raise a child that's not his, right? Or, domestically abusing your man and then turning around calling the cops on him and him getting arrested even though he didn't do anything. Those, in my opinion, would all fall under toxic femininity traits. So if nobody's willing to coin the term toxic femininity and feminists like to turn it on its head and be like, oh, you're just stealing what we say. How fucking original. Since that's the point, then either one doesn't exist, both don't exist, or both exist. Those are your three options, right? So if those are the only three options, well, obviously one can't exist without the other. So there's really only two options. Either they exist, or both don't exist. Those are your fucking choices.
You're up against the deepest pocketed, most talented companies in the world with godlike technology who are trying to do one thing, and that is sequester you from your other relationships. They're either trying to get you to glued to the phone, and one of the ways they glue you to the phone is by enraging you. Elevating content that makes you angry at your neighbor. Elevate content that makes you start blaming the other gender or blaming immigrants for your problems.
And this is being done on purpose.
Well, they didn't start out as malicious, but I'm in marketing. We used to think that it was sex that sells. Then the algorithms found something that sells even more in terms of gluing you to a screen, and that is rage. So I'm not suggesting we censor these folks, but they will elevate content. They will figure out your political leanings, your fears, and then start elevating content that enrages you, because enragement equals engagement equals shareholder value. So keep in mind, the amount of time you spend on a screen as a young man, and biologically your prefrontal cortex isn't as developed as a woman. It doesn't catch up until you're 25. The executive function, the need for dopa, is much more dangerous in a young man. Keep in mind that you will find they are trying to essentially convince you can have a reasonable facsimile of life on a screen.
And him saying that kind of makes me laugh for two reasons. One is that, again, I go back to my original statement that he is, by all intents purposes, a liberal plant in the industry, right? He blew up overnight. So go back to the 2020 election, right? And then this election back in 2024, where the liberals, the Democrats, were spending money on how to talk to men, right? And so they threw some backing behind this guy because he's soft-spoken and he talks about how that, men should be living for women and protect women and provide for women and stay in their traditional roles. But when you talk about the other hand, well, what about women? He's like, yeah, women can do whatever the fuck they want. He doesn't care about that. He thinks that men are the problem. So, it's silly to me that he's talking about algorithms like, oh, they're used to enrage you and this, that, and the other. It's like, well, yeah, that might be true to a degree because you get stuck in an echo chamber, but you're basically saying that all men are idiots and stupid and that they just sit there and scroll on their phone all day getting pissed off at nothing when they have a lot of reasons to be pissed off, and rightfully so. AI taking their jobs, the feminist movement, they're losing homes at a rapid rate. They can't find jobs anymore. They're feeling useless. They're feeling hopeless. There's nothing that a man can do that's ever right in the eyes of society. They're constantly being videotaped at gyms for just glancing over at a woman. Honestly, you really think that this just happened overnight, right? Men only started acting this way because, oh, they got algorithms and phones. Shut the fuck up.
45% of men 18 to 25 have not engaged personally on asking a woman out for a date, or I find that to be shocking.
Almost half of young men have never asked a woman out in person. And there's a bunch of factors around that. One, it's difficult. It's just not easy. One of the key skills I think a man has to treat or try and give his son is to how to express romantic interest while making that person feel safe. And this is only anecdotal evidence. When I go out and I'm in social situations, I'll have women approach me and say, I'm here, I'm single and I'm ready to mingle, I look amazing, and a man hasn't approached me in 3 months, right? And 80% of women still expect the man to make that initial approach.
And then when he does, they blast him all over TikTok as a creep, or even maybe not as worse, but make that man feel embarrassed to his core for even remotely asking, like, you're not in my league, make him feel like he's just the stupidest person on the planet. Women made it abundantly clear on social media, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, whatever, that they do not like when men approach them. They don't want men approaching them. They're like, I look this way for me. I don't dress this way for you. Translation, I'm looking this way to attract a hot, rich guy, a guy that's 6'3", a guy that's got $200,000 in his bank account right now that he could spend on me, and who's hung like a horse. If you don't fit that category, then I don't want to talk to you. That's the translation of that. So no, reason men do not go up and approach women anymore is they were told not to. And men, we are very bad at gauging our attractiveness. Most of us think that we're chuds, right? Most of us are like, I probably ain't got a shot with that chick. And so that comes down to confidence that women talk about. But when you show that confidence, you're blasted on TikTok as a creep.
You want good men who are more secure and better in relationships. They will model you. You can tell them whatever you want. They're just going to watch what you're doing. The first rule as a man is you need to be very good to their mother. Even if you end up going through divorce, the more generous you are, the kinder you are, I think your sons are going to notice that. If you say to a kid every day in, explicit and implicit ways, you're wonderful, I think at some point they start to believe that.
Yeah.
So that confidence is still with
That's
me.
really one of the first things I underlined on page 28 when you said, this is something for us all to remember, having a good person express how wonderful you are hundreds of times changes everything. I was tethered. I'd never thought of it that way before. Having a person express how wonderful you are hundreds of times actually tethers you in a way that nothing else can.
And I agree with, you should, as a parent, specifically to your children, let them know, how wonderful and special they are, and be a guiding force for that child in any way possible. But do you have any idea how hard women make it in divorce to just sit back and be nice to them and be like, oh yeah, trying to put on a good example for your son, while they're trying to take you for everything you're worth, including the ice cube trays. They want the house, they want the car, they want the cat, they want the dog, they want it all. And you as a man are just supposed to sit there and just pretend to be nice and play nice while mom is just being a complete and utter bitch. Like, do you listen to yourself, Scott? I mean, do you ever just stop and think to yourself, like, maybe I'm giving men some bad advice because, basically telling them that they should live for women is maybe not the most healthy choice of my platform to be telling young men that this is what they should be doing.
The most rewarding thing in life is relationships, full stop. And I think the most rewarding relationship is building a life with someone and having kids. I'm not saying you have to have that to be happy. And quite frankly, just to be raw about this, when I saw my partner who I've had kids with, I wasn't thinking I'd really like lower rates on auto insurance. I was thinking, just to be blunt, I would really like to have sex with her. And that forced me to be a better person, to try to have a kindness practice, to demonstrate excellence. And 18 months later, we had our first son. So let's stop demonizing men for wanting to procreate. It's a wonderful thing as long as you channel it into wanting to be a better man. The only thing I can guarantee you is that anything wonderful in your life is going to have a lot of no's. Full stop. And unfortunately, men aren't getting to know because they're afraid to, or they have what they think is a cheap substitute for these relationships online.
Or, and just hear me out here, that the risk to doing this is so high that men no longer see the value in doing it. So you're asking men to go out and change their lives entirely, completely, and do so for the benefit of women, for the same women that, oh, by the way, 83% of the time initiate divorce. And we've came to find out even recently that 54% of married women are cheating. So you have a higher than 50-50 chance not only to get cheated on, but definitely to get divorced. And so what's in it for the man? He loses his house, he loses his car, he gets told that he can see his kid every third Friday of the month with some fat bitch named Bertha, who looks like a fucking linebacker for the 49ers, that sits there and supervises you, and every time you wipe your kid's nose, she thinks you're a PDF file or some kind of abusing creep. What is in it for a man, period? And since you like to use this phrase, Scott, full stop. Nothing. There is nothing in it for a man in modern day with the way that these laws are made specifically for women. Did you know there's something called permanent alimony? What's permanent alimony? Whoa, let's see. Permanent alimony is some guy has to pay a woman he is no longer married to 48 years later. He's still paying for her to live. How in the fuck is that fair? How is that something that a man would want to do? Why would any man in his right mind go, hey, you know what? I want to get into a situation where I lose everything and I have to pay some bitch who hates my guts for the next 50 years of my life when I'm too old to scratch my own nuts. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, Scott. That's why men are just going out there in droves to do that. What a fucking idiot.
Did you see I was on Oprah? Have we already talked about this? I was on Oprah.
Yeah.
Ed,
I know you're on Oprah.
have you been on Oprah? Oh, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. You're on Katie Tour every twice a day, but I was on Oprah.
That's the only person who wants to speak with me. It's Katie Tour, and that's it.
Ed, I just love it. Let me just summarize every show you've been on MSNBC. They bring on a bunch of boomers, and then Katie goes, for the Gen Z view, we bring in Ed Elson, and you go, income inequality. I can't trust any of you. And everyone else on the panel looks like they've just been caught masturbating. They don't know how to respond to you. It's like a mic drop every time. You're literally and everyone who's watching MSNBC is like, he looks like he's 4 years old. Look at that young. Do you think we could set him up with our granddaughter? Where's my oxygen tank? That's what they're saying when they're watching you, because they're old.
I would push back, but I think you're actually completely right on this one. That's exactly what happens every time.
It's funny because they're old. They're super old.
So the reason I added that was, so as you could see, he was, clowning that, oh, I was on Oprah. Did you see me on Oprah? I was on Oprah. Were you ever on Oprah? No. Oh, that sucks to be you. No, you go on these other shows where old people make fun of you. Like, do you see his relationship with another man? Like, this is a guy that you should be listening to because his relationships with other men are so wholesome. He was literally busting that guy's balls. And I don't know if you noticed, but you could kind of tell with his, the other guy's laugh that he was somewhat uncomfortable with the way the conversation was going, right? Like, basically saying, oh, do you see me? I'm up there, bro. I'm in the echelon, bro. I'm way up there. You're basically dog crap. Like, come on, man. Like, that's no way to lift another brother up. You should be helping him, striving for him, being like, hey, man, I was on Oprah. It'd be really cool. Let's get you there. Here's some pointers. Here's some tips. But no, you got to be a dick about it. Come on. So that's all I got today. I just had a rant because this guy, he just boils my blood so badly. And I find it hilarious that he refuses to debate anybody or talk to anybody that's in the manosphere. You'll never see him talk to anybody like Andrew Wilson, because Andrew Wilson would literally tear this man the fuck apart. He wouldn't talk to Jordan Peterson. There was some point where they were going to get into the room together, and he backed out, rightfully so. Jordan Peterson would tear this man apart. He plays it safe. He talks a lot of crap, and his ideas of what men should be and how men should act and this, that, and the other is, in my opinion, just bad advice. I don't think that men should be out here living specifically for women. I think men should be out here living for themselves. If you want to better yourself for you. Don't do it just for some woman, because you're going to put in all of that effort. You're going to put in all of that work, and there's such a high chance that you did all of that for nothing, my guy. You did it for nothing. You might have got laid. Great. Good for you, bro. But guess what? Look at all that you lost in the process. So, guys, keep it real. Do things for yourself. Don't let other men tell you that you need to do anything to be better men for women. That's fucking horseshit. But that's all I got. If you get a chance, hit like, subscribe. I'll catch you all in the next video.